This is Chapter 2 of What Grows After Goodbye by Alexi Hart. By the time Michael Lawson pulled into Natalie's driveway, the late afternoon sun had mellowed to a honey-gold haze that bathed Willow Creek in nostalgia. Natalie paced the length of her front porch, half embarrassed and half excited, clutching a rag that probably wasn't necessary but made her feel useful. In the quiet moments after she'd hung up the phone, she'd vacuumed the living room, fluffed the couch cushions, and sprayed the air with lavender until it smelled like a spa and a bakery had made a baby. Then she'd chastised herself. This was Michael Lawson, the boy who once asked her to sign his yearbook with a shaking hand because he was too nervous to talk. Except he wasn't that boy anymore. And that fact had her palms sweating worse than any first date she'd ever been on. Michael stepped out of his truck with the toolbox in one hand and a bottle of sweet tea in the other. He wore a white Henley rolled up to his elbows and a pair of jeans that were stained with something suspiciously like paint. Natalie's pulse did a little tap dance. He looked relaxed, confident, and like he'd stepped out of a commercial for farm-to-table restaurants.
"Hey,"
he called as he approached.
"You ready to do battle with this faucet?"
"Only if you're sure you're qualified," she replied, leaning against the porch column so she wouldn't fidget. "I don't want your mom mad at me if your house floods." He grinned, the corners of his eyes crinkling.
"I think I can handle a faucet. I watched at least 2 YouTube videos on it."
She laughed, the tension easing. "That's one more than I did. Come on in." Inside, the house was cleaner than it had been the day she'd hosted Jacob's graduation party. Michael glanced around, his gaze lingering on the family photos lined up on the mantel. "You've kept this place nice," he said. "Ben built most of this house himself," she admitted. "Every time I think about changing something, I hear his voice in my head complaining about people painting brick fireplaces." Michael's expression softened. He was good with his hands. The remark hung between them like a piece of lint she couldn't catch. She thought of Ben's hands, calloused from working on cars, warm when they held hers, always moving with purpose, and her heart ached and calmed at the same time. She nodded and led him to the kitchen. The faucet sat in the sink like a smug villain. It had dripped steadily for years, never enough to cause damage, but enough to remind her she wasn't in control. The plumber might have fixed it in an hour. She'd chosen Michael instead, because it was easier to admit to herself that she was lonely than that she needed professional help. He set his toolbox on the counter, unscrewed the handle, and bent over the sink. The sight of his broad back, his shoulders straining against his shirt, sent a warm flush through her. She busied herself by pretending to organize the spice drawer.
"Hand me that towel?"
he asked, reaching a hand back without looking. Natalie passed him the rag she'd been clutching like a security blanket. "Your mom said you were staying with her for a bit," she said casually, trying to ignore the way his fingers brushed hers. "Visiting or—" Michael straightened, wiping his hands. His hair fell over his forehead, and he pushed it back absently. "Or hiding out from the real world," he finished for her. "A bit of both. I needed to get away from Atlanta for a while. There was a lot." She raised an eyebrow. "That sounds ominous. Are you okay?" He gave a half laugh. "I sold my tech company last year. My partner wanted to move on, and I didn't know what I'd do with myself if I wasn't working 18 hours a day. So I sold it, took some time off, and now I'm here trying to figure out if I'm a retiree at 35 or between projects." Natalie's mouth dropped open. "You sold your company?" He shrugged like it was no big deal. "I started it in my garage after college. We built software for small businesses, accounting, scheduling, stuff like that. It took off. Then bigger companies came sniffing around." He shook his head, a rueful smile playing on his lips. "I know you probably think I'm some big hotshot now, but I swear I still watch cat videos and forget to pay my power bill sometimes." His wealth wasn't what surprised her. It was the nonchalance with which he spoke about it. Ben had always equated money with security, savings accounts and life insurance policies. Michael treated it like a tool, and maybe a burden. She realized she liked that. He didn't move away right after. He stayed close, breathing with her, kisses slowing until her body remembered how to settle. "You okay?" he asked, voice still rough but careful. She nodded, a quiet laugh catching in her throat as he tucked her closer like it was instinct. "So you're on sabbatical," she said. "I guess you could call it that." He tightened a bolt and twisted the faucet. Water sprayed directly into his face, arching over the sink and soaking his shirt. Natalie squealed and jumped back, but not before a spray of water hit her right on the chest, drenching her white tank top. She looked down, mortified to see her bra on full display through the wet fabric. Michael slapped his hand over the leak, water running over his fingers and into the sink. "Sorry, I listened the wrong thing. Towel?" She thrust the rag at him, then snatched a dish towel off the oven handle and pressed it against her shirt, her cheeks blazing. "It's fine. It's water." Michael bit his lower lip, but a grin crept onto his face. "You look like you went through a car wash." "You're not exactly dry, Mr. Lawson," she shot back, gesturing to his dripping shirt. The cotton clung to his chest, outlining muscles she never would have guessed he had in high school. If the situation weren't so ridiculous, she might have stared longer. He laughed, a deep, genuine sound that made her want to join in. "I promise I'm better at writing code than plumbing." He tightened the bolt again, and this time the stream of water stopped. "Try the faucet now." Natalie turned the handle. Water flowed smoothly. No drips, no leaks. "Oh my God," she breathed. "It's not dripping." "Not even a little," he said, proud. "See? I'm not a complete disaster." She smiled, the embarrassment fading. "Thank you, seriously. You might have saved my sanity." "Consider it my good deed for the day." He grabbed another towel and wiped down the counter. "Although, I think I owe you another shirt." She glanced down at the damp fabric plastered to her skin and laughed. "I think I'll survive. I should probably go change before the neighbors think I'm auditioning for a wet t-shirt contest." He cleared his throat, his gaze flickering to the window and back. Right. Sorry about that." Natalie felt a giddy mix of mortification and amusement. It had been years since she'd felt embarrassed in front of a man. With Ben, the boundaries had been set and comfort had replaced self-consciousness. This was something else. Something that made her feel like she was learning how to flirt again, while simultaneously trying to figure out how to remove a stuck shower head. She excused herself to the bedroom and quickly changed into a fresh top, a soft green blouse that made her eyes seem greener than they were. As she brushed her hair and dabbed on a touch of mascara, she stopped and stared at her reflection. The woman looking back at her had laugh lines around her eyes and a strand of gray at her temple. She was older than the girl Michael had known, but also, she realized, more comfortable in her own skin. She hadn't planned to be flirting with anyone ever again, but maybe, it was time to let herself have fun. When she returned to the kitchen, Michael was leaning against the counter, sipping his sweet tea. He looked up and gave a low whistle. "Much safer for the neighbors," he teased, nodding at her dry shirt. She stuck her tongue out at him. "Watch it. I have a wrench, and I'm not afraid to use it." Duly noted. He set the tea down and wiped his hands on his jeans. "So, what's next? Do you have any other household emergencies I should know about?" She opened her mouth to say no, but then hesitated. "Yes, if you know how to fix a lawnmower that refuses to start, I will bake you an entire pie." Michael's face lit up. "Homemade pie? Consider me your on-call handyman." They moved out to the garage, where the old lawnmower sat forlorn and stubborn. Michael knelt beside it, tinkering with wires and muttering under his breath, while Natalie sat on a milk crate and told him about Jacob's dorm move-in, about how quiet the house felt without his music blasting, and about how Darlene had threatened to sign her up for goat yoga to get her back out there. Michael listened, offering sympathy and the occasional sarcastic remark. He told her about the nightmare of corporate lawyers, about his mother's new obsession with succulents, and about how he'd stopped by their old high school and discovered the mural they'd painted sophomore year had been replaced with a motivational quote. "They painted over our masterpiece," he said, feigning outrage. "Do you remember that hideous dinosaur I tried to draw?" Natalie laughed. "How could I forget? It looked like a lizard with scoliosis." He groaned. "I'm wounded. I thought I was being creative." "You were," she said, nudging him with her foot. "Creatively terrible." They bantered easily, the years melting away. At one point, he sat back on his heels and looked up at her, his expression earnest. "I always liked that you never made fun of me like everyone else." She blinked. "Of course not. You were sweet." He held her gaze. "Maybe too sweet. I had the biggest crush on you, and everyone knew it, except you." Her breath hitched. She swallowed. "What? No, He chuckled, shaking his head. "It's fine. We were kids. You were happy with Ben, and I was busy being invisible. But I thought I should tell you, so you don't think I'm suddenly showing up at your house because of a faulty faucet." Natalie didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to apologize for something she hadn't been aware of. Part of her wanted to ask if that crush still lingered in any capacity. Most of her was still stuck on the fact that he'd noticed her at all. "You could have said something," she managed. He screwed a nut onto the mower and shrugged. "Maybe. But you and Ben were like the sun and the moon. Everyone orbited around you two." His voice held no bitterness, a factual acceptance. "Besides, it worked out. I went to Georgia Tech, met people, built a life. This is different." She breathed. "Different how?" He looked up again, his eyes earnest. "Different in that we're not 18 anymore. We're adults who've been through some things. I'm not asking you out right now. I'm not going to pretend I don't enjoy your company." The lawnmower sputtered to life. Michael let out a triumphant whoop, and Natalie laughed, the tension dispersing like mist in the sun. "Wow," she said, clapping. "I was going to call a mechanic, but apparently all I needed was a former software engineer with a secret crush." He stood, wiping his hands on his jeans, then offered his palm to help her up. "Happy to be of service." Their hands met. His grip was firm, warm, sending a current up her arm that landed somewhere in the region of her heart. She let go quickly, afraid he could feel her pulse racing. "Pie," she blurted, grabbing at the easiest escape. "I owe you pie." He smiled. "You do. But only if I get to watch you bake it. I have a reputation to uphold now as the guy who can fix anything." She rolled her eyes. "As long as you know that includes doing the dishes afterwards." "Deal," he said. "Also, can I ask you something else?" "Sure." "Will you come to the Founders' Day fair next weekend?" he asked. "I was going to go anyway, and it would be nice to not wander around alone eating funnel cake." Natalie's immediate instinct was to say no. The fair was a staple of Willow Creek, a blend of carnival rides, craft stalls, and fried food that left you smelling like powdered sugar for days. She'd gone every year with Ben and Jacob, and then with Jacob after Ben passed. Going without them had felt like a betrayal and a reminder. But maybe, she realized, going with someone else could be a way to create new memories without erasing the old ones. "Okay," she said slowly. "On one condition." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" You have to win me one of those giant stuffed bears at the ring toss. I've always wanted one.
He laughed. You're on. But I'm warning you, my coordination is limited to keyboards and wrenches.
Then maybe we'll have to cheat. They locked eyes and grinned, conspirators in a plan that felt like more than playing games. It felt like saying yes to something she hadn't let herself consider. The possibility that her life could be more than the roles she'd already played. As Michael gathered his tools and she walked him to the door, Natalie felt a strange mix of contentment and anticipation. The sun had slipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon in shades of amber and rose. The cicadas had begun their evening symphony, a familiar, comforting hum. "Thanks again," she said, holding the door open. "Anytime," he replied. He hesitated, then leaned in and pressed a kiss to her cheek. It was brief, warm, and entirely innocent, and yet it sent her pulse into a sprint. "See you soon, Natalie." He turned and headed to his truck. She watched him go, her hand drifting to where his lips had touched her skin. The air seemed to vibrate around her, charged with possibilities. When she closed the door and leaned against it, Natalie realized she was smiling. Not a polite smile, not a fake smile for the benefit of others, but a real smile that felt like the first time she'd driven with the windows down and the radio up. It was a smile that told her, maybe, a new chapter was beginning. She glanced at the fixed faucet, at the towel on the counter, at her reflection in the microwave door. And for what felt like the first time since Ben's death, she didn't feel guilty for looking forward. She turned off the kitchen light, humming to herself as she went to preheat the oven. She had a pie to bake, and a fair to look forward to.